Hello and welcome to the Vaults of Terra. My name is Ed and today we're going to be continuing our Space Marines chapters videos by continuing with the Ultramarines. Now today we're going to be talking a little bit more about their culture and their organisation, as we didn't really cover that off in too much detail in our last video. Now the organisation of the Ultramarines is what you'd expect. They are in fact a Codex Astartes specific chapter. Now this is of course because their Primarch, Roberte or Robert, however you want to pronounce it, Gilliman or Gulliman, however you want to pronounce that, was the author of the Codex Astartes. Now what this means is that they have exactly 10 companies, each with 100 Marines in them, each broken down into separate squads of 10 men each. Now, because the Codex Astartes is considered their holy work, because the Codex Astartes is considered a holy work by the Ultramarines, they do not diverge from this structure and maintain it at all costs. There is one caveat to that. Recently, after the Tyranid invasions, the Tyrannic War Veterans were formed, which are specific squads of veterans who have skills fighting the Tyranids. However, they are rolled into the usual Codex Astartes command structure, and so are not quite the large divergence that many would fear within the Ultramarines. Now, each company within the Ultramarines is led by a captain that also has some sort of high administrative role within the realm of Ultramar, which is where the Ultramarines reside. Now, this can be anything from the regent of a planet to the maintenance of her merchant fleets, which is of course very strange for a Space Marine to have such civilian roles, but because Ultramar is considered under the protection of the Ultramarines, they do have direct control over it. Now, Ultramar is not one single system, it's in fact a realm within the Imperium of 9 systems controlled uniquely by the Ultramarines. Now, Macragge is the capital of Ultramar, as I've mentioned previously, and is actually home to the Fortress of Hera, which is the fortress monastery of the Ultramarines. Now, moving briefly on to the gene seed of the Ultramarines, it's in fact incredibly pure with a very low chance of mutation, meaning that the Ultramarines have some of the best genetic stock of all the Adeptus Astartes in the Imperium. This also means that they've had quite a few successor chapters over the years because they are able to support them with the stable gene seed. Now, many of these successors are actually quite close to the Ultramarines, although it's more looking up to a father figure than a group of brothers pulling together, like maybe the Dark Angels. And of course, many of these successor chapters do travel to Ultramar at one point in their lives as a sort of pilgrimage to visit the shrine of the Ultramarines Primarch, where their gene seed comes from, where of course Robote or Robert, Gulliman or Gilliman can actually be viewed set in stasis at the moment of his assassination, so he continues to live whilst at the moment of his death. Now, moving back to the culture of the Ultramarines, they are in fact a Codex chapter and believe that the Codex Astartes and their Primarch helped shape the Adeptus Astartes and the Imperium as they see it today, and they see themselves as a paragon of his work and an example that all should follow, including the wider Imperium, as to how Ultramar is run. However, this does mean that they are seen as a little bit straight-laced and stuck up by many other chapters and the general Imperium at large, because they believe they are right, beyond the opinion of any other, especially those chapters who do not follow the Codex as strictly as they do. In the Ultramarines chapter, any divergence from the Codex can lead to punishment, which is because the Codex does in fact give tactical advice as well as organisational advice. Depending on the seniority of this Marine, it can also lead to them having to take a death oath, where the Marine is to complete an almost impossible task before they can return to the chapter. And whilst they are doing so, they are considered exiled, they are no longer Ultramarines. Now, this is a very harsh punishment for a Space Marine who has lived beside his brothers almost his entire life. And so going on such a death oath is seen as such a punishment that many always strive to uphold the Codex even when they can see that the Codex does not allow for a certain situation. Now, the Ultramarines are also strongly influenced by their unique history as the stewards of Ultramar, and interacting with the human population. Now, the Ultramarines have more contact with mortals in both an administrative role as well as at a personal level than many other Space Marine chapters, although there are a few exceptions, such as the Salamanders. And so they are usually better at dealing with mortals and understanding their behaviour than other Space Marines, and are able to maybe read facial expressions, unlike several other chapters. However, they tend to be highly intolerant of those who do not work for the betterment of others, so anyone who acts out of greed, spite or avarice will attract a very low opinion from any Ultramarine. Finally, I just want to talk quickly about their recruitment. Now, they recruit as tradition dictates, by Guilliman from the worlds of Ultramar. Now, there are no shortage of volunteers, since the Ultramarines are revered throughout the realm, and many families will boast that they have had a child taken away to be made an Ultramarine. Now, aspirants actually go to training in barracks institutions right across Ultramar before they are inducted into the chapter, at which point they will undergo their genetic transformation into scouts, as the Codex dictates, before completing their transformation into a full Space Marine. Now, one final mention is the equipment of the Ultramarines is very standard for a Codex chapter. As you would imagine, they primarily use a bolt gun or bolt pistol and chainsword. However, they do like to keep with them a gladius, which is a type of short sword, which many of you will know was the common sword in the Roman period, and prefer to use bladed weapons such as axes, rather than the standard weapons of the Codex Astartes such as a combat knife. Now, of course, they will carry a combat knife as the Codex dictates, but they do prefer more direct weaponry. Now, that's everything I wanted to mention on the Ultramarines so far. Now, I know there's a few bits and pieces I haven't covered. A lot of that will come up in the Ultramarines video during the Horus Heresy videos. Now, if there's anything else you specifically want me to add at this point, then do let me know. However, we will be moving on next time to a different chapter. Now, as I've said before, the Raven Guard, the Iron Hands, and the Death Watch are currently in the running, along with a few other chapters, so do keep voting below, and if you have any other suggestions, do let me know. Now, that's everything I wanted to say today. See you next time on the Vaults of Terra.